My next guest on Stronger Bones Lifestyle podcast is Tricia Nelson, and she specializes in cravings, in sugar addiction, food addiction, and actually helping to raise awareness to what that actually means. She has a quiz where you could find out, are you a food addict? She also has a program to break up with sugar, to manage sugar correctly, which is really important because sugar is inflammatory and inflammation is behind almost all diseases, especially bone health. Bone loss is strongly correlated to sugar. Listen to what Tricia has to say. There's a lot of fun information and self-inquiry in today's podcast episode. Okay, so Heal Your Hunger is the name of is that the name of your book also? It's the name of your site?
It's my podcast, it's my book, it's my website.
Okay. And I don't even know if people even think of that. Like when I hear Heal Your Hunger, there's something really triggering or not, and maybe stimulating about that. So I love that in and of itself. Can you explain how you got into this, why you got into this, and what does Heal Your Hunger even mean?
You bet. So I'm somebody who was obsessed with food from a very young age. Like as far back as I can remember, 4 or 5 years old, I loved food. I loved to eat. I loved to cook. I loved to make food for other people, play restaurant when I was super young, go out to dinner. I mean, food is a big highlight for me. And that would have been fine. You know, there's lots of foodies in the world. Problem for me is I gained weight easily. And by age 21, I was 50 pounds overweight. And there was a time when my sister came home. This is back in the 80s. She came home one day and she announced that she was an emotional eater. I'm an emotional eater. And I thought that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard because I was younger than her. I'm like, whatever. And so the thing is, because I was thinking, that's not me. I just like food. And yet, the seed had been planted. And then I started to observe, as a teenager, I started to observe my relationship with food and see that, like, when I went out to lunch with my friends, you know, we'd go to like a Friendly's. I'm from the Northeast, so a Friendly's or a Denny's type place, and they'd order a sandwich and it would come with fries, and they would eat their sandwich and pick up their fries. And I'd look at them like they were crazy because I would eat my fries and pick up my sandwich, you know, and then they might order, you know, a hot fudge sundae. I'm totally dating myself, but you know, those long, narrow glass jars with the long metal spoon. So they'd order a hot fudge sundae with the whipped cream and everything, and they'd eat about half of it. And then they'd push it aside and say, I'm full. And again, I'd look at them and I'd be like, full? What does full have to do with anything? So I'm starting to observe that I am not like them. Like, I want the fries, I want the ice cream sundae, and full has nothing to do with it. I will eat all that fudge. You know, I'm not missing any of it, right? And so I'm like, okay, so I am a little different. And then I started to really realize over time that there were emotions involved with my eating habits, that I would eat even though I wasn't hungry. You know, I'd go to the refrigerator and look in, like, in an evening, I could go like to the refrigerator 3 different times looking for something, as if some elf had, you know, between time 1 and time 3, some elf had put some new food in there. Same food, right? But I'm looking for something to satisfy me. And so when I called my company Heal Your Hunger, it's because what happened for me is no diet worked for me. No diet plan, pill, potion, lotion, nothing changed for me. Like, I could lose weight for a time, but I always put it back on. I was a yo-yo dieter. So I was down 20, up 30, down 10, up 40, you know, and I had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew what size I was going to be because of the roller coaster. And so what I came to see, I met somebody, thankfully, when I realized diets weren't going to work for me, you know, and I had actually lost a bunch of weight at the time and I was about to go back up the scale like I always did. And then I'm like, enough dieting. It's not working, you know, and statistically speaking, it will not work. 98% of all diets fail. So I decided no more dieting. And then by the grace of God, I met somebody who mentored me who had been obese and showed me how to heal at a deeper level. And so I started working with him. He helped me change everything. And my relationship with food drastically changed. No more diets, no more like crazy exercise programs, just really sane and healthy self-care, and cluing into my emotions because my eating was emotional, and I knew it by 21. I knew I was an emotional eater, that it really didn't have to do with physical hunger. So Heal Your Hunger came about decades later, when I wanted to have a business online helping women specifically with, weight loss from the inside out. No more diets, no more craziness, but like really solid self-care and addressing one's emotional life, so that we weren't using food to make ourselves feel better. So Heal Your Hunger it became the name of my company, and it's really to heal the real hunger, because it's not food we're really hungry for. It's not sugar and processed carbs. As much as they're yummy, I will, attest, I still have a sweet tooth, but the thing is, I am hungry at a deeper level, and that was always unaddressed, which made me just have to eat and eat and eat. I was definitely a binge eater, but like nothing really sated me. I could get stuffed, but as I talk about in my TEDx talk, I'd eat so much food. I could sit in front of the TV with my favorite ice cream and potato chips. You have to have salty with the sweet after all. And so I'd sit there and I'd eat too much. And then I'd be like, ugh, I feel sick. And I'd throw out the remains. I'd throw out the remains. But later in the evening, maybe I pass out on the couch after a show or whatever. And then later I wake up, I've got a little more room in my tummy. And I'm like, oh, I threw away some of those potato chips, or there's cookies in that garbage can. And I literally would go get it, Debi. I'd go get them because I knew they were okay to eat because they were in the package still. But the thing is, I felt mortified that I would do that. And I thought I was the only one. So I talk about that. Garbage eating is what I call it. I talk about that in my TEDx talk, which has gone like gangbusters because people are like, oh my God, I did that too. So I had so much shame around my eating. It was not sugar and carbs I was truly hungry for. And I help people deal with the real hunger so they can feel a lot more balanced around food, not feel compelled to eat, not have crazy sugar cravings, but just start to really mend their relationship with food and make healthier choices.
Yeah, so I have a confession. I am a garbage eater. And here's the solution. You have to put vinegar on it when you put it in there, or ketchup or something gross.
Vinegar. I'm telling you, I've heard coffee grounds, I've heard detergent, but you know what I'm talking about. And thanks for being so transparent on your own show. You guys, you've got a great show host here. She's totally transparent, and that's, of course, that's the best thing, is when we can be honest about our patterns that we think are so unique to us when they're not.
Right. And then what this brings me to is, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you.
Absolutely.
So it's the deeper aspects. And
that's what I'm talking about.
The thing, I mean, for me in my work, bone health and working with gut health and bone health, I would say that the number one topic, now you're doing the weight loss, and I mean, for all of us women also, right? That's a big thing. We don't want weight. And I've been on that yo-yo thing. I'm actually 40 pounds less than I was when I had my total hip replacement in 2017. So I get that whole weight thing too. But food is so important. And we don't actually always pay attention to the emotional part of that.
Yeah.
And with bone health, or with any disease state, weight is the vanity part. Like, I don't want the weight on me. I want to look my best possible or fit into my jeans. But usually when we have excessive weight on us, there's usually other things metabolically that are breaking down. And in my world, it's bones.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so I don't focus on weight loss that much specifically. I really do focus more on emotional eating, because if we don't emotionally eat, the weight does take care of itself. Like, most of the reasons why we sabotage our weight loss goals is because we have to have that chocolate, or we're crawling the walls. Our healthy eating diet is like, not like it's good on paper and it's good for a couple weeks. And then we're like, Katie, bar the door. I need my fix, So I really like to play in that area, that gray area of emotional eating, which a lot of people most people aren't talking about. They're talking about ketones and vegan this and, whatever, right? All these different ways, intermittent fasting. But we're not talking about when we blow it, Why? Like, why are we reaching for that thing? Why are we going and getting those cookies in the trash? That's primarily emotional. I mean, of course, sugar is highly addictive. If I eat sugar, I want more sugar. Like there's a definite physical aspect to it. And we have to address that, and we have to clear sugar out of our diet so that it's not setting us up to crave. But beyond that, I say 90% of the rest is really emotional. Like we want our comfort. We want to soothe ourselves with something carby and caramelly and chewy, ooey gooey and chewy, I like to say. And that's, we can feed ourselves in other ways. We can console ourselves in other ways. And that's really the work that needs to be done, is what are those emotions and how can I heal them so they don't drive me to the kitchen time and time again.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think here in the West, conventional medicine, especially in the functional medicine space, we're starting to say, all disease begins in the gut. And we still have that body perspective, right? We're still saying that the gut is everything. And I'm a yoga therapist. I just got back from India studying with my teacher. What I've learned studying yoga is that everything begins in the mind. And this is where your work comes in, because it is the layer of the mind where the emotions are triggered or are kept or are created
Stuff down.
Yeah, stuffed down.
Yep.
Exactly. So it really is, we have to go deeper. We have to, we're starting to understand this mind-body complex when it comes to health. So we have to go to this layer of the mind and stop. It's like the start line, really. It is, I say that the brain, our whole nervous system pathway is like, horse races where you have all the horses in the gate, like that metal gate where all the jockeys are on the horses, and the horses are jumping. With the minute they open the gates and and they're off, whatever that trigger is of and they're off, this is that emotional pattern that you're speaking about. So even raising awareness to this is great. And so your Heal Your Hunger. We're going to talk about the sugar in a second, because I think those are two pieces I want to speak about. There's two things that I'd love to share with my community that you do. One of them is even understanding that that the emotional part exists. And I know you have programming and your TED Talk, and you have a lot of great resources there, and a book. Don't you have a book?
Yes, I do. It's called Heal Your Hunger: 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now.
Okay, so I actually have your book.
Oh, right.
I do. And I don't have it here where I am right now, which is why I don't have it to show. And so those on video could see it, although we'll have plenty of information in the show notes of how everyone can find you. But I think this is really important because the main area that I have to start work, and honestly, even all my work, when I created my program that was going to be an 8-week-long program, my mentor said to me, what is the topic that they speak about over and over? Like, do you really talk about the yoga therapy piece here and the gut piece here? And I said, to be honest, every single discussion, almost all the questions is about food, about diet, about what do I eat. So it's so important.
Oh, yeah. You can't heal any kind of ailment. If you want to do so naturally, you can't heal any, if you want to get to the root cause of it, you have to address your diet. You can't be, hoping for change when you're putting trash in your body. And sugar is trash. Processed carbs are trash. Junk food. That's why we call it junk food, right? And that was what I craved, and the reason why we crave those foods is because they kill the emotions. We don't binge on salad. So, typically it's not like, oh, I need more celery sticks. No, we binge on heavy processed, sugary, carby foods, bread and pasta and, cookies and cake and ice cream and chips, Doritos, potato chips, because they're heavier, they're high calorie, and they do stuff our emotions so we don't feel. And we don't think of that. It's not like, give me the potato chips. I don't want to feel this feeling right now. We don't make the connection. But after this show, hopefully people will start making the connection. Food is doing something very specific for us. Those unhealthy food choices, we don't just make them. And it's not just the physical attraction to them either. And I call it the PEP test. So if people are like, oh, they're like me, like, emotional eating, that's crazy. I just like to eat, or I just like food. I say take the PEP test, which is an acronym PEP. And the first P stands for painkiller. So on a subconscious level, we don't want to feel painful emotions. What kind of emotions am I talking about? I'm talking about loss or grief. I'm talking about, just even a change in our schedule or moving to another part of the country. That brings up a lot of painful emotions, insecurity, the unknown, the whole logistical part of it. Or we change jobs, or, we have a dysregulated kid or grandkid. There are so many painful emotions. And if we've been bearing our emotions for a long time or using food to coat those emotions, right, to kind of soften the edges of life, we're basically using that food as a painkiller. The E in PEP stands for escape, because as emotional eaters, we have very busy minds. Something in my book is called The Anatomy of the Emotional Eater. And what I mean by that, it's a play on words, of course, but it's 24 personality traits that make up the emotional eater's personality that have nothing to do with food. Like, it's not food that's the problem. Food's kind of like the caboose on the train, so we have to deal with the train, the cars before it. And the thing is, as emotional eaters, one of those traits is having a racing mind. We overthink everything, way more than your average person. Our minds are super wound tight. We're busy thinking about everything. What does she mean by that? Why did he look at me that way? Why did I get the invitation? Should I have said that? No, I should have said this. It's exhausting being us, living in our heads. And so the food, I got my favorite binge food, sat in front of my favorite bingeable TV show, and all of a sudden, I'm not noticing all the scary, daunting thoughts going through my head. And so we use food to slow our minds down. We use food to escape the scary thoughts. I call it awfulizing, because we're not thinking happy thoughts. We're not like overthinking happy thoughts and best case scenarios. We're thinking worst case scenarios, and it does get scary in there. And so the food just sort of puts a kibosh on that for a little while, at least. Of course, it comes back because food doesn't work that well. And so that's the E in escape. That's the E in PEP, which is escape. And the last letter, P, in PEP, the second P, stands for punishment. And we use food as a punishment, which may seem a little strange and counterintuitive because we think of food as a reward. We always use food as a reward. I've worked so hard this week. Let me go have my favorite dinner. Or, I've been at the gym all week. Let me stop and get my Haagen-Dazs or my Ben & Jerry's, And so we use food as a reward. But if you play the tape and you hear what happens after that whole pint is gone, which I never put the lid back on a pint of ice cream. So, it's a pint and a spoon. But then when we overeat, or then we have to have our salty with our sweet, and we end up eating the bag of chips, and we feel gross and bad and recriminating. Why did I do that? I can't believe I lost control again. Or what was I thinking? Or my doctor just diagnosed me with prediabetes or osteopenia or whatever. It's like we're so mad at ourselves. That is not a reward. What we're doing to ourselves afterwards is not a reward. So we use food as a form of punishment. Sure, it can be a painkiller. Sure, it can be an escape, but it's got a built-in punishment element as well. And it all works together to make us feel miserable and then to set us up to do it again, because we're beating the hell out of ourselves after we do it. So I draw people's attention to the word PEP, painkiller, escape, and punishment, so that people can start making the connection that, yes, it's not just that we like food. Yes, there is some underlying emotions going on, some crazy thinking, like you said, starting in the mind, that is driving us to eat these unhealthy foods and sabotaging our health, sabotaging our happiness, sabotaging our sex life. Who the hell wants to have sex after a binge? Not me, So it's like there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and it's great to have those acronyms. And when I work with women, I use the word building and dissolving. Is this going to build your bones, or is this going to dissolve your bones? So when you bring in, after you get over the PEP, after you recognize, I was thinking we're a bunch of escaping garbage eaters. I just couldn't help
Yeah.
it and then it's like, we're going to punish ourselves as escaping garbage eaters. And I really think that those are actually really helpful because once you can actually put framework around, you could put words around, you can actually, what you really do, when the woman's going crazy, the lunatic lady, blah, 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 and then they slap her across the face to kind of stop it.
Yeah.
That's what that does. So that acronym brings somebody to present moment. Whoa, wait a minute. Is this the P, the E, or the P?
Yeah.
For me, are you building, is that going to build your bones or dissolve your bones?
Great question.
Build or dissolve. And so then you could bring them there. So that's really great. And I like that you broke it into those 3 different areas. There's a whole biochemical aspect to this, right? Where there's
Absolutely.
drivers behind all of those things too. And it's interesting when you say the punishment. So I'm sure, and I don't know, I'm sure you probably could tell us, I don't even know if we need to know the biochemical aspect, but that whole dopamine, that risk reward, serotonin,
yeah.
dopamine aspect, I'm sure all of that's playing a role here.
Well, okay, so that's why sugar is so addictive for us, is it is absolutely lighting up the reward center in our brain. There's definitely, that biochemical where we're getting the dopamine hit. And we have classic signs of addiction, for those of us who sugar binge, it's like we crave more because we feel the reward and because we're building tolerance and we have to have more in order to have the same, lit up effect. Not only that, but it is addictive where we do crave more because our bodies are literally physically addictive. And this has been true in mice. Studies in mice prove that sugar can be more, if not as addictive as heroin. And the classic signs of addiction is once you start, you can't stop. Once you start, you increase, the amount to get the same lit up effect. If you stop, you have withdrawal symptoms. That sets up the craving, and you do it in spite of negative consequences like osteoporosis or diabetes. It's like all the classic signs of addiction to other things, like drugs and alcohol. And it's, people are like, oh, they feel so silly that they're addicted to something like food or like cookies. But the thing is, they're everywhere and people are pushing them. It's more socially acceptable and you have to eat. If you have to eat anytime you're going to a party or you're at holiday time, everybody is bringing out all the treats, all the sweets. And it is so hard to say no. And the thing is everybody wants you to eat it. It's crazy. It's like Aunt Bessie made the pie. Can't say no to Aunt Bessie. And so there's the added, pressure, peer pressure, and then the pressure of it being, quote, okay and acceptable and even encouraged. And you have to live with this stuff in your kitchen. It's just sitting there on the countertop, and your kids are asking you to buy it. I mean, there's so many aspects of this that make it harder to stop than drugs or alcohol. With alcohol, you can put the plug in the jug and that's it. With food, you have to take your nemesis out 3 times a day and then try to, deal with it in a sane way and then get it back in the refrigerator without it killing you. Or making the wrong choices that are going to destroy your body and your bones. So really important for people to understand this is actually harder than other addictive habits. It's not easier just because it's something is innocuous as a cookie or a piece of bread. It's actually harder because we can't say no absolutely, right? We have to eat.
Yeah, and the thing is sugar is a trigger of inflammation. And we know that inflammation is behind most diseases.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the rat studies. You know what I've recently learned in the last year or so? Do you know that we share 90% of our DNA with rats and mice, which is why they use them in studies?
Wow.
I'm like, what? What is gray and furry and where's my long tail? But so we there is credibility to some of these studies. What's really interesting for me, so my population is 50 plus and maybe even closer to 60 plus. No, 50, okay, 50 plus.
Mine too.
So what's really interesting, because we're in that same generation.
Yep.
We all went through the fat-free generation.
Yep.
And the fat-free generation kind of, maybe there was even a part of that laid down some of this foundational aspects of sugar and sugar cravings, because that's what was used typically in place of fat.
Yep.
When you want to make something taste good, it's either fat, sugar or salt.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
where it's going to come from. What I'm amazed by, Tricia, so on my population, osteopenia, osteoporosis, I'm amazed at how many women 50 plus are, as I'm going to say, you're going to say this, is the word addicted, are addicted to sugar or eat too much sugar. It's actually mind blowing to me because I feel like there's so much information out there on how bad sugar is. And I think they say that more than 50% of the population is pre-diabetic. And I feel like we have a lot of information and we should know better, but we don't. And that's because of all the things you're talking about, how this addictive quality to sugar.
Absolutely. Yeah, and people don't realize it, and what's really hard is that people are always trying to, like, eat it safely or eat a little bit, and I just wanna say, it may not be possible for some if you are sugar addicted, which I certainly was, and I have a high sensitivity to sugar. I had a high sensitivity to alcohol, and alcohol is basically the most refined form of sugar there is. And so the thing is, because of that, it was hard for me to eat a little bit, just like it's hard for me to drink a little bit. And so I think it's important for people to know that it can be easier to actually cut sugar out of your diet than to try to eat it in moderation. Doctors and practitioners will often say, well, a cookie's okay, just moderate. But there are some of us who can't do that. Like, we try and we try and we keep feeling like failures because my doctor said I should moderate, but geez, once I start, like, once the doors are open, I can't close them again. And that's the addictive nature of sugar. And so for some people, actually saying no is easier than saying, sure, give me a little bit. And that's why I offer something called the Quit Sugar Challenge, is like when you quit sugar and you cut it out of your diet, and this does not mean you have to be deprived of sweet things. I still have a sweet tooth. It's just that I use things like stevia and monk fruit to sweeten my yogurt, for instance, or my, whatever it is. I make great pancakes out of, coconut flour, and I put a little bit of stevia, a little bit of banana. It's like we don't have to give up like fruit sugars and that kind of thing, although moderation there is good. But the thing is, we actually can be sugar free without feeling deprived. And I think that's really important for some people to know, is that, when you do say no, like I often say, none is easier than some. None is easier than some. And so that makes it easier to enjoy a sugar-free life, have great skin because sugar causes wrinkles, and yet, feel sane around food, have a better sense of control around food, and still have your sweet tooth.
Yeah, some is not always better than none, or none is better than some. And you know what? Those friends of mine that could eat just a little bit, I'm like, really? I'm not that person. And I guess for those of us that are garbage eaters, we would know that we are not those people. Yeah. So you have one thing just before you have a challenge, you mentioned your challenge, but the other thing too that plays a role here is that we kind of set up the course. I was saying that about, did we come from that fat-free generation and expose ourselves to sugar? We start out our lives craving sugar. Breast milk is very sweet. And so there's an innate aspect to this as well. And then there's some underlying things that could be drivers. When you start to heal your gut, when you start to manage your yeast and whether you have yeast overgrowth or not, because you might have yeast overgrowth because you fed it in the first place. And I gave up sugar in my late 30s for that reason, because I had chronic sinus infections for every 3 weeks. I went on a course of antibiotics. I'm a supernaturally minded person. This is like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. I would go on an antibiotic like monthly because it seemed like every 3 weeks I was getting a sinus infection. Now,
Wow.
at the time, my kids were all probably around 10 or less. I have 3 kids. And I had a motto, the motto, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah.
Well, my motto was, when life gives you kids, make margaritas. And I made them, and I made simple syrup. So I was drinking. I was also infusing vodka. So I was drinking. Now you're helping me
Wow.
realize that that's a big form of concentrated sugar. And
Yep.
eating, my daughters were Girl Scouts. We were the Girl Scout cookies and all that.
Oh, Lord. Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah. But once the nutritionist explained to me that there was yeast overgrowth that was creating these sinus infections over and over, and that the primary food source that they were craving was sugar. And I gave up wine. I don't know if I gave up the margaritas, but I gave up drinking wine anyway, and sugar. And so for me, really, and once you get that out of your system, so you have this challenge, quit sugar,
Yeah.
which is guided by you, an
Yep.
expert, which is a really important aspect. Because it is possible once you get that, even if you think you have a sweet tooth, you're that person. I was that person. Even if you think you're that person, you can do something with guidance and change. I am no longer that person. So
Mm.
I did make that shift. So explain what your challenge is, because you do this a couple times a year. This is going to be below in the show notes, linking out to this. So I want you to explain what this is, because I'm going to try to have this podcast correlate with when your next one is. But can you just explain what this is that you offer?
Totally. It's a 5-day quit sugar challenge. It's done in 5 steps. We start with sweet. They're all sweet. So we do with we call we I'm sorry. We start with it's all sweet. So it's sweet sleuthing, sweet sabotage, sweet swaps. And what all these things mean is that we're looking at, first of all, reading labels. There are 80 plus names for sugar, and manufacturers use this to their advantage where they hide sugars in the foods that we eat. They literally will call sugar by different names. Like, the candy bar kind or kind bars. Of course, they sound fabulous because they're kind after all. Well, they put 3 different kinds of sugar in kind bars. So we'll be addicted. So we'll love them. But I'm telling you, they are not kind to our bodies, okay? So we talk about sweet seduction, kind of what sugar's doing to our bodies. We talk about sweet sleuthing, how to read labels and get those sugars out of, those products, even healthy products like in-kind bars. They are soups from Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. I mean, they're sneaking sugar into our foods. And the reason why we have to sleuth those out is because if you think you're eating a clean diet and then your healthy foods have sugar in it, you're screwed. Like, you're being sabotaged. We talk about sweet sabotage, which is addressing emotional eating. You cannot address just taking sugar out of your diet. You have to deal with your emotional dependence on sugar as well. Because I hear people say things like, I can't stop eating sugar. It's like what will make me happy? Like, sugar is my happy place. Or I can't live without sugar. Very emotionally charged words around the relationship with sugar, which means we have to address the emotional dependence as well. Then the sweet swaps is a great day. That's day 4. Because I give people all kinds of, products they can refer to, look for at Whole Foods. I've done all the label reading in Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and Costco, so people can find foods that are healthy, that don't have hidden sugars, all different ways to have healthy soft drinks and natural soft drinks and that kind of thing. So it's really, and recipes on top of it. People can make yummy recipes without any sugar in them. So it's a 5-day challenge. We gamify it. We have prizes. It's really fun, but we do it in community because, together we can do hard things. Really, really important. Together we can do hard things, and cutting sugar out of your diet is hard. And even if somebody just wants to start by minimizing, like just starting to get conscious about the sugars in their foods, it's a great place to start, being a part of the Quit Sugar Challenge.
Yeah, a lot of great things you were saying there. And I look for sugar in labels. I look at total sugars, but I also look at names, and I know some of the other
Yeah.
names for them. But now you're making me realize that there might even be more than one sugar. So you might
Oh,
look
yeah.
far down and or see it, you try not to find it close up to the top of the list.
Right.
But yet it could be so embedded. And if you have
Oh, it's sneaky.
yeah, and if you have 3 of them, then if they were together, that might be the number 1 ingredient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Those manufacturers are so sneaky, and they know if they pile sugar in our foods, we're going to eat more because we're a sugar addicted nation.
Don't get me started with I am all about big pharma, big insurance, and big food. So big food, we talk about big pharma, we talk about big insurance ruining or controlling our healthcare system, and kind of it really is, it's turned into bad medicine versus good.
Yeah.
And big food plays a role here too. Sugar is inflammatory. Inflammation is a root cause of osteoporosis and many other diseases. So your sugar challenge sounds like it has a lot of what's needed. And it's not just about doing a program. It's not about just joining a challenge because it sounds good and it's something you need to do. You need the community. You need the guidance. And
Yeah.
you offer that in this. So this
Yeah,
is why.
I even have our holistic chef who's part of our team. She's on there as well answering questions because she goes a lot, more nitty-gritty about ingredients and that kind of thing. So she's in there the whole time chatting it up with people and answering people's specific questions.
Yeah, because there's ways like I cook. I've gone to professional cooking school. That's a big part of what I do as well. And there are ways to bring sweetness out of things without adding sugars. There's ways to reduce things. There's ways to use natural things that contain vitamins and minerals and fiber and give you that sweetness. So it is about relearning or just first raising your awareness to the emotional part. When ladies do visit your site after listening to this podcast, your quiz that you do is to find out, are you an emotional eater or a food addict? Addict.
Yes.
And that to me is crazy. It's like, really, am I a food addict? Well, what about and probably sugar addict?
Yes. Well, if you're a sugar addict, you're basically a food addict because we're not like eating white granular sugar. We're eating products, we're eating foods that have sugar in them, and carbs, processed carbs as well. Carbs metabolize as sugar in our bodies. That's why we love chips. That's why we love bread. That's why we love banana bread, sugar and carbs. So, the thing about that quiz, it's a great place to start for somebody who does struggle with food and weight. And if you struggle chronically with food and weight, you're probably an emotional eater or a food addict. But when you take that quiz, it's like a 3-minute quiz, but you get a personalized score. And where you get scored on is basically whether you're kind of on the spectrum of being an emotional eater. So in the low end of the spectrum is emotional eating. We're all probably prone to emotional eating. It's sort of like God designed us, like you mentioned, breastfeeding. We were designed to have an emotional connection with food. But then there's somebody on the high end of the spectrum, which is emotional eating gets worse and worse to the point where you are food addicted. You can eat a lot in one sitting. You're eating unhealthy food choices in spite of doctors' warnings, like you're pre-diabetic or osteopenia, whatever. It's like we're the signs are there and we're doing it anyway. That means we're addicted. Like I said, the classic signs of addiction. So just take the quiz and find out your personalized score. And then there's some really cool resources offered based on your particular score.
Yeah, this is important. I mean, the two areas that are the most important for bone health, one is diet. So you have to manage that. You have to make that bone building and not bone dissolving. The other piece is the movement piece. So yoga therapy for that. So really
Yeah.
the food is really the biggest pillar in my work that I focus on. And so hopefully the ladies are going to go and do the work that they need to do to reframe the way that they eat so that it can be supporting health and not contributing to bone loss in our case.
Amen.
Okay, anything else you'd like to share with us before we end?
No, just it's not about the food. Even though you have cravings, there is a deeper source for that. Could be physical, could be emotional, it's likely both, and just know that even though it seems like it's about the food, right? If we're in binge mode or we're feeling out of control, it seems like it's about the food, but it's really, go deeper, take the PEP test, ask yourself what's really going on. What am I really hungry for? And then get support and don't diss yourself because you might need support to make healthy choices. We all need support. I hire coaches to help me with things that I won't do on my own. One of them is exercise. And the reason why people come to you, Debi, is because you will guide them and they won't quit. They won't crap out, right? When you're right there helping them. And it's true for anything that's hard and honestly, anything that's hard and good for us. We need support to follow through. Otherwise, our head will attack us and we'll be like, I don't need to do this, or I'll do it tomorrow or whatever. So really important to get proper support. Otherwise, those healthy choices aren't going to happen. And just reach out. My website is healyourhunger.com, HEAL. My podcast, which you've been a guest on, is the Heal Your Hunger Show. My Instagram is Tricia Nelson _. But people can go to my website and find my book, my TEDx talk, everything, and the quiz right there on the homepage. And it's healyourhunger.com.
Yeah, that's great. And the whole thing about community, I think, is important. That's where I'm really moving myself more towards, is the community aspect. Because we need to be with each other. I love to guide. I love to be there for the support. And even the women that are in the community, right? They do the support. So then they become part of that support. Women helping women. Love it.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. Lots of great information. And I'm sure that there were some aha moments for people. And you know what? There's a lot of people thinking, oh no, or wait, am I a garbage eater? Or they are actually realizing they are garbage eaters.
You kind of know it. If you've done it, you know you are. And there's no shame in it. I have like thousands of people who have watched literally 2 million people have watched my TEDx talk. And so many people in the comments are like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is your TEDx talk. So they've got to listen to your TEDx talk as well. Well, Tricia, thank you so much for coming and sharing this information with us on Stronger Bones Lifestyle.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining me on Stronger Bones Lifestyle. Are you ready to take charge of your future? For show notes, resources, and information on my programs, please visit DebiRobinson.com. If today's episode empowered you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it. Together, we're building stronger bones and stronger lives. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.